Today also demonstrates American leadership. By moving our embassy to Jerusalem, we have shown the world once again that the United States can be trusted. We stand with our friends and our allies, and above all else, we've shown that the United States of America will do what's right, and so we have.
But of course, all this comes as Israeli forces have now killed dozens of Palestinians who were protesting the opening of that embassy on the Gaza Strip.
That's where I want to bring in our next guest, Ambassador Ido Aharoni, former Israeli Consul General in New York and the Global Distinguished Professor at NYU School of International Relations. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Ambassador, let's go to the basic question first, question on everybody's mind, but you have a unique experience. So your answer, I would say, carries more weight than many of our guests. What does this mean, this reset, this renewed strong alliance between the United States and Israel? What does this mean for both regional Middle East security and global security?
Well, it means a great deal. It means that you can be an honest broker and still think that the Palestinians are making horrible mistakes repeatedly and habitually. Their policies have been self-defeating. And the argument against moving the embassy, let us not forget that Congress passed a resolution already in 1995 to move the embassy. And it hasn't happened ever since, simply because of the threat, the implied threat posed by Arab leaders and by the Palestinian leadership, that if the embassy will be moved, this will change drastically the status quo and will bring about a wave of violence. The Palestinians are trying to turn this into a violent event, but really there shouldn't be any reason to turn this into a violent event. This is simply the United States recognizing Israel's capital, Jerusalem, moving their embassy to Israel's capital. Determining which city is your capital is one of your basic rights as a nation.
Ambassador, you mentioned the violence. I mentioned around 41 people, Palestinians, protesters, have died during this ceremony today in the Gaza Strip. A lot of people, as you know, in the international community opposed moving the embassy there to Jerusalem for fear of violence. You said there shouldn't be violence. The president maintains that he wants a peace deal. Do you think it's still achievable?
I think it's achievable today, perhaps more than ever before, simply because of the fact that the Palestinians know that they are not going to determine the fate of any diplomatic proceeding using violence. And violence doesn't pay. They have to learn that lesson very, very hard. And unfortunately, nobody wants to see Palestinians dying. Obviously, we have no issue with the Palestinian people. We do have an issue with their failed leadership. The Palestinian leadership that is failing the hopes of the people time and again. That's what they did again today.
Ambassador, but let me ask you, this violence we're seeing in Gaza, how many of those engaging in the violence are rank-and-file Palestinians as opposed to Hamas agitators? Where would you put the percentage of Hamas agitators in that crowd causing these problems?
Well, this is a well-known Hamas methodology to use civilians in order to carry out military actions. 40,000 Palestinians reportedly participated in today's riots, but the IDF reports that there were at least 4 or 5 attempts made by Hamas guerrilla units to penetrate the fence elsewhere. In other words, Hamas system is very simple. Let's use the masses as a blanket to attempt to carry out guerrilla warfare against Israelis, and that's exactly what they tried to do today.
So it was a distraction in many respects. The using 40,000 Palestinians was a diversion so that they could infiltrate Israel in other areas.
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened.
Ambassador, you believe peace is more likely because of this embassy being moved to Jerusalem. A lot of people, though, would argue otherwise, but a lot of people see peace as being a two-state solution. Right. And we had former House Majority Leader Tom DeLay here on the program. He is against that notion of a two-state solution. Where do you stand?
Well, you know, first of all, we have the official policies. Let us not forget that the last 4 administrations in the United States, beginning with the first administration of George W. Bush, supported the two-state solution. The last 6 governments in Israel supported the two-state solution. In fact, it's in the guidelines of the current Israeli government, coalition government. So the two-state solution, as far as the diplomatic process is concerned, is the only solution on the table. What's the problem? The problem is that the Palestinians, every time they were offered a territorial solution, declined to accept it. 3 times. The first time was in Camp David in 2000. The second time was when Ariel Sharon pulled out of Gaza in the summer of 2005. And the third time was under Ehud Olmert in 2008. They had 3 golden opportunities to accept the territorial deal, which was not perfect. You know, no deal is perfect. But because of their approach that this is a zero-sum game, they were unable or incapable of accepting the notion of compromise, and they failed every solution, every attempt to bring about a solution. Today, the biggest problem that the Palestinians have is not President Trump, it's not Prime Minister Netanyahu. The biggest problem they have is the Israeli public opinion.
You know, so where does Hezbollah in Lebanon, Ambassador, factor into all of this? Are they passive partners of Hamas in this unrest, or are they working alongside of Hamas, Iran, and other bad actors in the region to create these problems?
Well, Hezbollah is an arm of Iran. They're part of the Shiite axis. Hezbollah suffered a major blow in Syria. They made a terrible historical mistake siding with Assad. They lost about 1/3 of their fighting force in the war in Syria. The Iranians are trying to establish military presence in Syria in part in order to help Hezbollah. Syria historically, since the 1980s, has served as the pipeline through which Iran transferred ammunition, technology, and money and funding to Hezbollah based in southern Lebanon. Right now, Hezbollah is quiet, but who knows, maybe we will see this intersectionality between Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad. Who knows what will happen? This is a very fragile moment in the history of the Israeli relationship with the Palestinians.
I want to go back, though, to the Trump administration making this move. As you mentioned, this decision was actually made in the mid-90s. Trump actually decided to actually go through with it instead of delaying it and delaying it and delaying it. Yeah. A lot of people have criticized the former administration for not being pro-Israel enough. How does this reset that relationship, if you will? Because the U.S. has come under harsh scrutiny from many people in the international community for making this decision.
Well, first, I don't believe that any administration, at least in the years that I've been monitoring and looking at the situation very carefully, any administration was not pro-Israel. All of them were very, very supportive of Israel. And sometimes, like the case of the Iran deal, there was a friendly disagreement between Israel and the United States under the leadership of Barack Obama and John Kerry, and I think that's perfectly legitimate. I may disagree with some of the things, but I think it's perfectly legitimate between friends to have disagreements. The problem that we have is that the Europeans are still in the mindset that you have to appease the Palestinians in the name of this sacred neutrality. And we say there is no such thing. When you use children and women as a human shield, like the Hamas did today, there is no excuse. You can't support Hamas. There's one thing that is united to all the groups that claim leadership over the Palestinian people: the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the rest of them. None of them is about promising the Palestinian people a better future. None of them. If you look at what they're actually doing, you ask yourself, what is their problem? Lack of money. Gaza Strip received billions over the years. What did they do with the foreign aid? What is it that they want? They want jobs. Many, many attempts were made to create industrial zone along the Israeli-Gaza border, and those zones were attacked repeatedly by Hamas people. What do they want? The territory? Ariel Sharon pulled out of Gaza in the summer of 2005. They had the entire territory for themselves to turn it into an economic miracle. What did they do with this golden opportunity? They turned Gaza into one huge ammunition depot.
Ambassador, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to have you.
Newsmax TV. Watch us on Dish, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, Verizon Fios, or download our free app. Don't have Newsmax TV? Call your local cable provider and request Newsmax today.